What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the newest episode of the Bleav in Oregon podcast. I am joined by one of my favorite guys in the business, a mentor of mine, the great Mike Jorgenson. Jorgie,
the great.
Jorgie, where do we start, man? I'll start here. Have you even recovered a semblance of an ounce from last night? Where do we start?
Oh boy, that was off the charts. Zach, I can't believe that day played out like it did. I mean, not only from the weather and how juiced the fans were and how early they got in the stands and how packed the student section seemed like it was and was, frankly, 30 minutes before the game started. I just, a lot of things that I just haven't seen before because of how big that game was. And it didn't fail us at all from beginning to end and everywhere in between. About the time you thought somebody was going to get a 2-score lead and shut down this game, nobody could. Back and forth, the two teams went. It was a special, special day, and I'll tell you, hopefully it doesn't linger too long because you got to look to the next one if you're the Oregon football team, but we as fans can enjoy it for a long time to come.
Yeah, we're going to get into that quick turnaround because this team does play on Friday night, and that's going to be a quick turnaround after one of we can say one of the biggest games in program history, maybe the biggest win in regular season history for this team. Just a quick recap of the game. I mean, back and forth all night, 7 total lead changes, a lot of missed opportunities for both teams. I think both teams leave this game thinking, wow, we left some points on the board. We left a lot of opportunities to win this game and maybe even dominate this game. I think both teams kind of feel like they could have won this game by, 2 possessions, but there was a lot of chances to lose that game for both teams too. In the end, the Ducks pulled through. In a second, I just want to go through some of our biggest moments of the game, kind of our favorite moments from the game. But I just had a chance to rewatch the game this morning, rewatch the game film. I found myself as excited watching the replay of the game as I was last night. I mean, this was just, take your fandom away, Ohio State fan, Oregon fan. This was just incredible football to watch in front of us.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it just kept you on the edge of your seat all night long, whether you were at home having to watch it and not be there to be able to yell. I have a feeling a lot of people were probably at home yelling as loud as the crowd was the whole game long from beginning to end. And that's what was amazing about Autzen Stadium. And again, it was one of those ones, Zach, where I just thought, Ohio State wins the toss. They go down and score. And it's like, uh-oh, these guys are pretty good. And then Oregon came out, didn't really move the ball after just one first down, gave it back to Ohio State. Didn't want to see Ohio State really establish anything, and Oregon stopped it right there. Was able to stop Ohio State, get the ball back, score. But then the little things in this game started happening that were big things. The bobbled extra point that almost turned into 2 points the other way. I think people forget about that play right there. The play that Kenyon Sadiq makes to track down the Ohio State defender. It could have been 9-6 just like that. And the way the game ended up following up to the end, that's the difference in the game. So there were just little plays here and there that you just couldn't afford to miss. And it seemed like both teams missed them at the same time, which kept that game within 1 score all the way to the end.
Well, and what I take away from that is I'll be selfishly plug some of my own work right here. I wrote a column this morning, or actually late last night. I didn't get to bed till I think 3:30 last night because I was up writing the whole time. But one of the favorite pieces of writing that I've had, and it's just about that, how this was a different and I think transformative Oregon win because of what it wasn't. In the past, we've seen games like this where things go against the Ducks in the way that they did last night. And Oregon loses that game 10 times out of 10. I mean, one of your best defensive players, one of the best players on your roster gets, hurt in practice on Thursday and out for this game. Sometimes they don't ever come to that. On the first drive of the game, Jeffrey Bossa comes away with an interception that doesn't get reviewed. I'll let you go off on that in a second because I know that you have some feelings. And Oregon is rarely able to overcome something like that. But there are so many different things in this game, whether it's the missed extra point, bobbled snaps, a wide open Tez Johnson running through the end zone that, doesn't get seen, a player getting ejected for spitting in another player's face. Oregon has rarely been able to overcome these type of things, let alone this many things in a single game and still win. And they did last night. And that just, I don't know what it is. It's hard to put into words, but it feels so different. Do you know, what is that feeling for you? How different is that?
Well, it's the feeling that I think this team is going to get from a confidence level standpoint, because it's been some of those close games in the last couple of years, particularly with our Husky friends up to the north, that of where Oregon has stumbled in those really close games, the big games that you need to win to really be recognized as that team nationally. And they've been close, but just haven't gotten over the hump, whether it's in the Pac-12 championship game last year, the regular season matchup in Seattle, the year before in Eugene. Every time you got into one of those, it just seems like going forward on 4th and 2 was going to be the nemesis, right? Not kick a field goal. But that didn't end up being the end of the game, because these guys fought through it. They made plays. They overcame, maybe not reviewing a call here or there, maybe making a play or two, a kickoff that really isn't an onside kick, but a line drive that bounces off of Ohio State player. Oregon gets on it and is able to get points out of it. I mean, there's another play that you sprinkle in. And so it just was such a back and forth roller coaster ride. There was no flow to it. And the lack of flow, it's what made it so exciting. It kept people on the edge of their seats. It was intense from beginning to end, all the way until Howard slides and there's zeros on the clock. And again, you see a veteran mistake like that Ohio State made. You see a veteran mistake like Trayshawn Holden made in relation just the unsportsmanlike conduct play of which was a huge play at the time and could be huge for the future. We'll see what ends up happening with that. But there's so many plays, Zach. And let's go back to the opening drive.
Please,
and just, again, whether they overturn the call or not really isn't the point. You got to stop and take a look at that play. How you can stop and take a look at all the subsequent plays thereafter and not stop and hesitate to take a look at that one in a big game like this just baffled me. And it baffled me for 5 or 6 series after that, where I think Jerry and Joey and Dusty on the field were getting sick of me because I kept going back to the first drive of the game. I was so pissed about it. But at the same time, those are the type of things that just really, I think, got everybody into it, including the crowd.
Isn't part of that on Lanning, though? I mean, once it becomes apparent that the refs are not going to stop the play and Ohio State's getting ready to snap that ball, why does he not take a timeout there and say, hey, guys, look at this. At least give them a chance. That's what I was thinking in the moment. Like, Lanning, at some point, you got to make your own luck. You got to kind of take a timeout and let them settle down here.
Yeah, I'm sure as a coach on that sideline, you're probably watching to see if you can take it down to that last second before the ball is snapped, as to whether they're going to stop play or not. And it's tough to know whether, Dan or staff thought that was going to be stopped. And you just get that feeling that that's going to take place. And the last thing you want to do is burn a timeout. Well, not the last thing, but to burn a timeout on the opening drive of the game also is a little bit odd. But, it's, again, those are the type of situations and decisions you have to make in a split second. And Oregon, didn't call timeout in that situation. The referees didn't review it. Ohio State continued on down and scored a touchdown. Luckily, that didn't come back to haunt Oregon.
Yeah, absolutely. We on this show, we usually go through our 3 quacks where we highlight players that we think stood out. I want to change things up a little bit in this game. I want to go through the moments of the game, because this was a game that just had so many different moments. We've touched on them a little bit already. I just want to highlight some of the biggest moments that kind of stand out in our minds, 12 hours, a little bit under a day removed from the actual game. I'll start. I think one of the biggest moments of this game, it's kind of unheralded at this point, but Derek Harmon's fumble recovery in the first quarter to kind of take that away, that I think was such a big moment in this game, because it really established that, okay, settle down. Ohio State scored, but Oregon's defense is still really good. And you know what? On the first 2 possessions, Oregon had 2 takeaways, really. If you got one of them, have an asterisk on it. But that was just, I think, such a big momentum play to get the ball back in Oregon's offensive hands after the punt on the first drive. That was just a moment that I would like to highlight. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, that was huge, because Oregon's down 7-0. They've turned the ball back over or given it back to Ohio State with that 7-0 lead. And Ohio State has pretty good field position as they're starting that drive. And, I think, for me, Zach, what was not only so important about that play that Harmon had made at that point in the game, and the disruptor he's been all season long. I mean, there's times he's in the backfield, not making the tackle, not making a sack, but just redirecting and creating havoc in that backfield. And he did it in this game again against a pretty good offensive line in Ohio State. What I love that followed that play that Harmon made were the 2 plays that Oregon ran to score, 2 running plays.
Big
Right
runs.
down Ohio State's throat to the 4-yard line or 3-yard line, and then the power into the end zone. That then sent a message to Ohio State that we can run it and we're going to run it. And it was tough at times. Don't get me wrong. And between the tackles in particular, there was some tough going. But Oregon popped a lot of plays. They outrushed Ohio State. And those 2 running plays after Derek Harmon's plays, those 3 plays right in a row, I think really sent a message to Ohio State that, it's not going to be a walk through the park in this game for you guys.
Well, let me build on that and say that my next favorite moment was the 69-yard reception to Evan Stewart down the right side, because we'd already seen that they could run the ball. And, yes, it was a struggle at times, but they were having a little bit of success there. Jordan James was playing really well. But then when you just see Dillon Gabriel have the gumption to take the top off the defense and just throw a bomb down the right side to the go route. I was sitting next to Tyson Alger in the press box, and we saw that double move from Evan Stewart, and both of us at the same time said, oh, he's got him. And he's just running out the top on the right side, and a perfect ball from Dillon Gabriel. Almost perfect. I'd like it to be a 1 more yard further so he could have caught it in stride and gone for a touchdown. But credit to Evan Stewart. He dragged the defender for probably 10 yards there, stayed in bounds, came back, and then, a couple plays later had that impressive one-handed touchdown catch on the left side with getting his toes in down. So that was a great moment because it showed that both aspects of the offense were working. And I think that's what you really need in this game. You can't be one-dimensional against Ohio State, and they showed that they were going to be able to do it on the ground and through the air.
Yeah, I think on that one, Zach, what I really loved about it, Dillon Gabriel was dropping some deep dimes all game long, balls on the money, that follow-up touchdown catch. Obviously, to be able to get that left foot in bounds, it was in about the only spot with pass interference, by the way, on the play. Yeah. Pass interference, all the grabbing that was going on and that type of deal. The guys overcame it. They knew that going into the game that's the way Ohio State plays. But to get in Denzel Burke's head, I think a little bit too on that play was a key because he's an NFL, high-level NFL type of prospect. And a lot of people came to watch. And to beat that guy deep on that play and then on the touchdown pass, and Tez Johnson did it the same way on the same guy a little bit later, I just don't think with, Ohio State loves to play their safeties up in the box, run support type of guys, figuring that they've got guys on the outside that can cover anybody. And for the most part, they can. I just don't think they were ready for what they were going to see with Oregon's receivers. And to blow the top off like that against their best corner, again, it just sent another message that you can't come up and take guys on in the face, jam them at the line of scrimmage and expect to be able to run down the field with them freely. I think Oregon did a great job, and it just sent a message and got in their head a little bit that this is a different team and a different game than you guys have faced all season long.
It really is. Do you have any other moments that stick out to you? There's one more for me, but I'm going to give you a chance.
Well, I guess I would just say Dillon Gabriel's read at the end, his touchdown run, and the block downfield by Terrence Ferguson. I mean, again, for Oregon to pop big runs generally, you've got to have good downfield blocking, whether it's the outside receivers, whether it's your tight ends, whatever it might be. There's got to be some blocking that takes place downfield. And the combination of the two things on that play, Dillon Gabriel's read to not give the ball to Jordan James, and then to get up the field, read the block by Ferguson and get back inside with his speed. I think, again, that was a key play in the game. And I'm going to talk about just one key group, frankly, and that's the Oregon offensive line. Because if you think about it, they had given up 7 sacks in the first 2 games. They've only given up 7 sacks on the season. So they've not given up a sack since the Boise State game, which is fantastic. And against this Ohio State defense that has NFL guys along the line of scrimmage, NFL guys at linebacker, some NFL type DBs, I think that just goes to show you that how much this Oregon offensive line has improved, and they're just as talented. So that group, my hat's off to them, what they did. The poise of Dillon Gabriel certainly helps, but there was great protection up front all game long for Gabriel to be able to pick that defense apart.
Absolutely. And we were concerned early on this year. I, at least myself, was concerned early on this year with Dillon Gabriel's pocket presence. And it seemed like he didn't really have a great feel for finding the pocket and evading pass rushers. Yes, part of that had to do with the offensive line for letting pass rushers in, but he kind of struggled with getting away from them and evading that rush. I think he did a great job in this game. There was a couple times when I was rewatching where he stepped up in the pocket and really sidestepped some guys back there and made a play, kept his eyes downfield, and was able to fire a ball downfield, whether it was a Trayshawn Holden or Tez Johnson. That was just so impressive. And going back to what you're saying about his run, that's what Oregon fans have been wanting to see from him. That feels like the play why he was brought here. I know Bo Nix could run, Bo Nix could do that, but that's the type of thing that we saw from Dillon Gabriel last year at Oklahoma or earlier in his career. And for him to do that, I know we haven't seen him run too much so far in his Oregon career, but it felt like they were kind of waiting for it and waiting for this type of moment to let him break out and do that. And it came at a great time. It was awesome to see.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was to say, just again, to have a guy like that's experienced in that game was a key. I mean, you think about where he was a year ago, right? Red River Shootout down in Dallas, winning quarterback through the winning plays at the end of that huge game with Texas. And here he was basically exactly 1 year later making the same type of plays in a huge game. And, a lot of people, I think, over the last 2 or 3 weeks have kind of questioned, maybe saying, hey, all we're getting is a B or a C game out of him. Well, B and C game's pretty good from a guy like that, but he had his A game on yesterday. It was the right time to see that.
When the stage is really big, he finds a way to step up,
sure
which
does.
is an incredible quality to have as a quarterback.
Great leader too. Yeah.
Absolutely. My last moment of the game, this is a very obvious one. This was probably their favorite, but I was able to be down on the field for this on the Ohio State sideline near the end zone, but watching Will Howard run and slide with what I thought was about 2 seconds left. And I didn't know if they were going to get the timeout. And there was kind of some confusion on what was happening. And then seeing Dan Lanning like spike his headset and run on the field and all the crowds start to come on the field and the players come on. Those are just the moments that make college football what it is, and college football so special. And yes, I don't know that I loved Oregon storming the field when you're the number 3 team over beating the number 2 team, but in the moment, it's like, yes, have fun, storm the field, go insane, let the duck crowd surf. And it was one of the biggest wins, if not the biggest win in Autzen Stadium history. And it just felt really special to be a part of that. And that's a memory I'm going to have for the rest of my life, just being kind of in the middle of that and trying to find my way, to Dan Lanning in the middle of all of that and get him on camera and get out of there into the media room. It was just absolute pandemonium, but the best type of chaos.
Yeah. I mean, you'll find, obviously, in my life, there's a few moments like that in Oregon football that are that special. I mean, there's a lot of special moments, no doubt about it. But at that level, there's not a whole lot of those we get the opportunity to enjoy. And this one just couldn't have played out more perfectly on national TV, kind of the biggest football event of the weekend, frankly, game day in town, Ohio State in town, all the fans. I mean, the red showed up pretty good for the Buckeye fans. They were populated throughout the stadium and making their noise and everything else that went with it. They were here early. And again, It was a Chamber of Commerce day. In relation to weather, it was the whole time. The fans were here for those 2 or 3 days. So the way that things played up all the way to that piece of it, Oregon's defense just making key plays, the offense making key plays, special teams in the end when you needed a 19-yard field goal. It's an extra point, right? But it's a game winner. And they were chasing points all game long, but at the end of the day, they scored one more point in Ohio State. You look at the stats, you look at the score, you look how close it was all the way along. 2 of the best teams in the country going head to head. Hope we get a chance to see it again, but it was nice to see this one in Autzen Stadium and for the Duck fans to be able to enjoy it because they had a huge play in this win at Autzen Stadium. They were a huge factor, and it was just cool to see. Really cool to see.
Yeah, you couldn't have scripted it better. And like you kind of said, it wasn't a fluke. This, it feels like the right team won. If Ohio State, they deserve to win too. They played a great game. They're a really good team. But Oregon's right there, and they proved that they are really a national title contender this year, and they proved that last night, and I'm sure they're going to have more chances to prove that this season. Let's get into 3 quacks and just highlight some players that really stood out in our minds. I'll start. This guy is kind of going unheralded because he didn't have all of the stats, but Mateo Uiagalelei stepping up for Jordan Burch last night and kind of stepping into that key defensive role. Let me see his stats real quick. Mateo he had 5 tackles. He had 1 sack, the only sack for the Ducks on the night, and was just a punisher on the defensive line. Just incredible game. They always say next man up mentality, and this guy brought it last night because that was those are big shoes to fill for Jordan Burch going out before the game, and he really stepped up in a big way.
Yeah, a little different type of player than Jordan Burch is too. I mean, Jordan Burch, very good athletically for a guy that's 290 pounds, but Uiagalelei is not 290 pounds. And that's the thing about it when you're playing an Ohio State offensive line like that, is sometimes you need the big bodies to be able to play defense. And Uiagalelei, you think about his height and weight, and strong guy that's really changed his body in a year's period of time. There's a few of those guys, and he's one of them, having to step up in a big role type of situation, and tough for people to handle. He is so athletic. He's long. He's starting to get the tricks of the trade down almost perfectly, where every other play that he's in there, he's putting some sort of pressure on the quarterback when it's a passing down type of situation. He did it again in this game, was only able to get home 1 time for the sack for the most part, but at the same time disrupting things, making Will Howard feel uncomfortable back there. And that's part of the game. Not having him be able to just stand back there like he did that opening drive and pick Oregon's defense apart. Eventually, Oregon turned up the heat on him a little bit, brought an extra guy every once in a while. But a lot of times when you don't have to bring that extra guy because you have guys like Uiagalelei playing in there, it just helps everybody else that much more. So he just gets better and better each and every week. And it was fun watching him on display last night in a national game.
It's kind of fun seeing him have to be in the spotlight afterwards too. He was one of the players that was brought out for interviews after the game, and he's still not completely comfortable in front of the cameras, in front of the media, and he was happy. He was sitting next to Jeff Bossa, who is incredible in front of the cameras and happy to field every question that comes his way, and he was happy to sit aside and let every question go by him to Jeff. So it'll be interesting to see over the next year or two how much he does there.
Yeah, you see the difference between a guy that's 23 years old and a guy that's 19, 20. The maturity factor and having gone through this is hugely different. And Jeff Boss, obviously a great leader on that defense, but Uiagalelei is headed the right direction, and last night was just another testament to it.
Who do you want to highlight for one of your quacks?
Well, I'd go back to Evan Stewart. I just think that Evan Stewart was a real key in this game. The big plays that he made, whether it was those 2 catches, the touchdown catch, and obviously, stretching that defense. And later on, he made big catches like that too. He took one over the middle where he catches the ball and gets drilled right off the bat. He knows it's coming, and it's so easy to lose your concentration on the ball. He got popped right up. He went back to the play. I just thought him stepping forward, especially when you lose a guy like Trayshawn Holden in the game, you had to have people step up. And I can't say anybody that came in for Trayshawn Holden, stood out and made 4 or 5 catches, Justice Lowe or somebody like that. So the guys that were in there, the Tez Johnsons and the Evan Stewarts, had to make plays. And obviously Terrence Ferguson made some huge plays too. But Evan Stewart's huge game in this particular game, the great catch on the sideline for the touchdown, the stretching of that Ohio State secondary, that's one of the guys on offense that really stood out to me. Dillon Gabriel did, obviously, just because of how much he was in control and really was poised, the type of poise you needed. But Evan Stewart was that X factor that you had to have in this game.
Yeah, let's highlight Dillon Gabriel real quick too, just because he absolutely deserved it. This was his best game in an Oregon uniform. He had 341 yards for the year, 2 touchdowns, another touchdown on the ground with 32 rushing yards. I saw today that he's back into the number 2 spot as far as betting odds for the Heisman Trophy go. Take that for whatever it's worth. It's just something I enjoy monitoring throughout the year. We talked about him earlier in the podcast, but we also need to mention Jordan James because he had another fantastic game coming off of his career high day against Michigan State. He had 115 yards and 1 touchdown in this game. Was really punishing against that Ohio State defensive line,
Yeah,
and they
there
fought
you
back
go.
too. I mean, they're a really good team. They did not give any easy yards, but he ran physical. He said after the game that he ran angry, he ran pissed off, and that's just kind of how he does it. That's how he likes to run, and it's very clear. So he's a different type of power style back that Oregon fans may not be used to, but he sure is fun to watch when he gets going.
Yeah, in the physicality of this particular game, he had to come to the table, and he did again, and he does. He runs angry. I think the difference between he and Noah Whittington in this game, you saw it, and Whittington didn't get as many opportunities, but at the same time, one of the backs is more physical than the other. And in a game like this, where Jordan James has good speed, but also if he doesn't have anywhere to go, he's going to try to run over people, and oftentimes he does. I mean, on that first big run he had that he followed up with the next run for a touchdown, I think he ran over Caleb Downs, the safety transfer from Alabama, who's a very physical safety, an NFL type of safety. And on down the field, he ran over the top of him at about the 5-yard line to get to the 3. And Jordan James had to have that type of game. Oregon needed to have a physical back in that game because it was going to be very physical at the line of scrimmage and beyond the line of scrimmage. He stepped to the table again, continues those 100-yard gains, but they're tough yards that he's making, and they were tough all night last night. It was great to have him in the backfield.
Well, on a similar note, we also need to highlight the front seven for Oregon's defense, because coming into this game, we knew that Ohio State's rushing attack was one of the best in the nation, with Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins being one of the best running back duos in the country. They held those two to a combined 110 yards. Quinshon Judkins really didn't do anything in this game. He had
No factor.
He had 23 yards. Travion Henderson had 87 total yards. 2 of those carries accounted for, I think, about 70 of his 87 yards. Those 2 back-to-back carries in the first quarter. One of them went for he went for a touchdown later. Judkins went for a touchdown at the end of that drive, excuse me. But Oregon's defensive front and the defensive line, I think, really stepped up. We knew that to win this game, you would need to shut down the rushing attack, because Ohio State's a very balanced team where they can beat you through the air as well. So you can't let both of those things get going. And the Ducks really stepped up against their offensive front, which is impressive. And I think the defense really, really played a great game in this.
What's really neat about this, Zach, is I sit there and I think about 2021 in Columbus, Kayvon Thibodeau and other people had to step to the table to make plays. DJ Johnson, for example, sometimes tight end, sometimes defensive player making plays type of situation. And that's what I really liked about this game is, sometimes next man up, right? Whoever that next man up is. And you never know if that's going to be good or if it's going to be bad. I think Oregon has the depth to be able to have the next man up still be an impact and a factor in these games, or to move people around however you need to, like Uyunglele. And so you think about the way that front seven played, and let alone the depth that they have developed that inside linebacker position. I mean, I sit there and I think about, Jacobs and Jackson and Betcher and Bossa, and coming into the season, I felt like Oregon had really 2 proven inside linebackers, and then I didn't know what they were going to do beyond that. And now they got 4 that all play pretty evenly, with Betcher the leading tackler on the team. Yeah. So developing that depth, and sometimes having what you think is a key cog, and is still a key cog, in Jordan Burch out of the games, so somebody else has to step up, just gives that defense that much more confidence as they head into the season. Whenever you get Jordan Burch back, it's just going to be a bonus. But right now, think about what you did without one of your key defensive linemen in that game, and still outgained Ohio State on the ground, outgained them overall. Really did a nice job defensively, making things difficult for Ohio State all game long. No big plays over the top. And I thought that was going to be probably the key to the game, not getting in front of the chains or whatever else it might be. But do you eliminate those big plays, with Jeremiah Smith and Ibuka? I mean, are you able to hold those down and not have the 40, 50, 60-yard big explosion plays? Oregon didn't give any of those up. The biggest plays were for the most part, by Travion Henderson, playing in his second time against Oregon. Obviously, he was on the Ohio State team when Oregon went to Columbus. So, but that front seven, to go back to your point, very good. The depth, I think, just proved that much more. And it's a nice little bounce as they head to play Purdue this week.
Yeah, let's we're gonna get out of here in just a second, but I want to talk about that because it feels like, with this game, Oregon obviously cleared a big hurdle. This was the biggest game on the regular season schedule. They got through it. The hurdles are not going to stop coming for this team. And the next one, obviously, is this week against Purdue. You got a cross country flight. You've got a short week. They play on Friday night. I personally am not really too worried about this because this feels like a game where coaching is going to show out. Dan Lanning is going to have these players ready in my mind, and I don't think there should be any worry about a hangover from this win and that they're going to be, overlooking Purdue like they might have overlooked Idaho or Boise State early in the season. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I do too. I think they're going to be very focused for this game. For the most part, they're going to hear it all week if they read any of the clippings that, oh, this is a trap game. This is a trap game. You just had the big game. Now you have the come down. This group is not going to let that happen just based on what I've seen in the makeup of I wouldn't call them characters, but the leaders on the team. And including Dillon Gabriel on the offensive side, Jeffrey Boss on the defensive side, and everybody else that goes with it. I just have a funny feeling these guys are going to be ready to go. First long trip, obviously, in the Big Ten Conference, back to Indiana and a nighttime game. So that gives you a little bit of extra time on a Friday night back there. But at the same time, it's one of those ones where it's kind of an oddball place. You're not going to a big city, maybe staying in Indianapolis, for example, but you're heading to a or Corvallis Pullman type of city with a big university in it, and it's been a long time. Obviously, these guys are going to remember it. Not very many people remember that Oregon's even played there, but they have, and back we come. And so I think these guys have a lot to look forward to, and this is another one of those games where you got to prove to the football fans, the other teams in the league, that it doesn't matter if Oregon plays a big game with what is not considered the biggest game the following week. They're a high-level type of team that's going to perform and get better and better each week. And I think that's the one thing as we get Coach Lanning every single week is he just wants to see improvement in his team week after week. They've improved every single week up to the Ohio State game. Now, this is another opportunity for improvement.
Yeah, I talked about that with Jonathan Stewart every week. So you don't want to be peaking in October. You want to be trending upwards, and right at middle of November, late November, that's when you want to be playing your best football. And I think they've done a really good job of improving each and every week. I know that Dan Lanning and his team have a 24-hour rule where they stop talking about this win and start focusing on the next one. I don't think I'm going to adhere to that rule because I want to watch this game a third time, maybe a fourth time, and just kind of bask in it again because something about it just feels different, man. We've been, you've been watching this team. You played for this team a lot longer before I was born. So, but I've been watching this team for most of my life, my football watching life. So something about this feels different.
We're fans too, right?
Enjoy that. We are. We're unbiased media members when we've got our job hat on, but when we take it off, we put on our fan hat. So this one is a lot of fun, man. Jorgie, thank you so much for coming on. I hope to have you on again soon. Break down another game after this. This was a lot of fun. Let's do it again.
All right, Zach. Thanks a lot. Go Ducks.
Go Ducks.